So the first story is going to be why the tortoise's shell is cracked. This is originally told to the author by Godfrey Chanda, and that was he's a subsistence farmer near Kalamazi Rose Farm outside Lusaka in Zambia. Here goes. Are you sitting comfortably? Once, a long time ago, the earth was perfectly stocked with fruit and water. Every river ran clear and sweet. Every tree hung with fruit. Every blade of grass was crisp and green. There were treats around every river bend, and every mountain top for the animals to eat, and every creature on earth was fat and happy. There was so much food that one day King Lion decided to celebrate with a feast. Gather your friends, your favorite foods, and let's meet this afternoon under the fig tree, he announced. This will be the greatest of all feasts. The jungle was a mess with moving animals as everyone hurried about gathering their favorite tidbits. Marula berries for the elephants, river grass for the hippos, sausage tree fruit for the giraffe, and soft roots for the hares. At sunset, everyone met under the fig tree and began munching and crunching with great gusto. From a tall giraffe crunching his succulent sausage fruit to the tiniest bat sucking on his guava. By midnight, everyone had had a marvelous time, except for one poor old creature, the tortoise. The slow fella had taken so long to gather his favorite cabbage leaves that by the time he arrived, the party was over, and his friends were burping and barking and heaving their fat bellies off to bed. Tortoise was very upset. As he sadly trundled home, he passed some of the birds in the tree. "What's wrong, Tortoise?" they asked, chirruping and cheeping. "Why are you crying?" "The animals had a feast today, and I'm so slow I missed it," wept the tortoise. "I was looking forward to having a chit-chat over a bit of the wild cabbage, but when I arrived, no one wanted a nibble or a natter." The birds felt very sorry for the tortoise. His face was so tear-stained and his mouth looked so downturned that there was only one thing that they could do. Holding their own party the next day. "And you will be the guest of honor, Tortoise," they smiled. Tortoise was very excited. He had never had a bird's party before. Then his face went glum again. "Birds usually have their parties up in the sky," he complained gloomily. "And I'm a big, heavy tortoise. How am I going to get up there?" He had a point. How were they going to fly him up to their favorite cloud? Asked the bird. Then the kingfishers piped up. "I've got an idea," he chirped cheekily. "What if we birds each donate a feather to the tortoise, and the bees gave him some wax to stick on him? Wouldn't he be able to fly to the sky then?" The birds all agreed that this was a marvelous idea, and one by one they flew down and gave their shelled creature a feather. First came the king eagle with a glossy white one, then the vulture with a speckled one, followed by the hawk, the bulbul, the sparrow, the weaver, and then the ibis and the stork, flocks and flocks of tiny rainbow-shaded birds. Before long, in front of Tortoise's scaly head lay a magnificent array of green, blue, black, white, yellow, red, striped, speckled, dotted feathers, gifts even from the smallest finch to the largest ostrich. Tortoise had never had so many gifts before, and once his friends the bee kindly spread their yellow wax on his shell and his legs and buzzed around sticking the feathers down. A great grin spread across his face. With a run and a jump, and he flapped his little legs, Tortoise was soon airborne. He whizzed up high towards the bird's cloud in the sky. When he reached the cloud, he couldn't believe the feast the birds had assembled. There were green grasshoppers and geckos, plates of red ladybirds and wiggly worms, crawly caterpillars and traily snails, and trays of leaves and cabbage and grass and fruit. What a feast! Tortoise's mouth started drooling, but before anyone was allowed to eat, King Eagle asked them all to introduce themselves to their new guest. "I am Kingfisher," said the kingfisher, flying forward, flashing his emerald egg. "I am the warbler," sang a sweet-voiced warbler. "I am Regret," fluttered a dainty white egret. Then the sparrow stepped forward. "And who are you, exactly?" he asked the tortoise. Tortoise looked confused. "Well, I have everybody's feathers on my back, so I suppose I'm everybody," he said. The king eagle stepped forward. "Now that the introductions are over, I open the feast. It is for everybody, so everybody tuck in." The birds looked confused. Was it for them, or was it for everybody the tortoise? Politely they held back and watched as their guests tucked into the wonderful feast. Head down and eyes to the floor, Tortoise munched and crunched without looking up once. First he gobbled all of the bird's favourite foods, which he didn't normally eat, the grasshoppers and the geckos, then the ladybirds and the wiggly worms, and then he crunched his way through the caterpillars and snails. And once he devoured that, he started munching on all of his favourite foods, the piles and piles of lovely lush leaves. The birds weren't pleased with Tortoise's rudeness, especially when he casually announced that he was going. "At least you could have said thank you," muttered a grizzly owl. "Or offered to share a worm, which we know you don't even like," muttered the crow. "Or halved a caterpillar," grunted the egret. But no, Tortoise was selfish. He was used to living alone and not sharing. And so when he finished his feast, he licked his lips, turned around and flew home, off the edge of the cloud. The birds were furious. How dare Tortoise eat all their food and not say thank you? If he was going to be so rude, they decided they were all going to take their feathers back from him. So, in a great flock, all the birds swooped down onto the tortoise, and they each pecked their feather off him. And slowly, Tortoise felt himself sinking deeper and deeper into the cloud. "Help!" he cried as he sunk in through the whiteness. "Help someone!" But not a single bird came. If you think you are everybody, then help yourself," they squawked, flying crossly away to their nests. Of course, without the feathers, the heavy tortoise fell to the earth with a tremendous thud. The landing was sore and very undignified. But even worse than that, it had ruined his shell. His once beautiful, glossy, glamorous outer layer was gone, and in its place was a shattered mess of hundreds of tiny squares. And today, if you look at a tortoise, its shell is still cracked. The gods left it that way to remind it to all creatures of what happens when you take from your friends and you take them for granted. Love them, and you will fly high. Forget them, you will fall, just like the tortoise did.